COVID-19 and what we're currently doing right now versus what we would love to be doing right now. If on your Zoom, if you're on the computer, if you can open the participants window as well as the chat window, everybody's going to be muted upon coming in. So if you put questions in the chat, then I can go ahead and call on you guys to ask those questions, and we can start more of a dialogue as we go through the agenda. And then if you have a question and I can visually see you, or if you have access to raise your hand, we'll look for those as well. Stephanie, the Vice President, is going to help me with that, and Lauren, who is also on the call, the section secretary, will actually be taking some notes, so she can include those notes into our weekly update that she sends out Monday or Tuesday. So it is a minute in, so I'm going to go ahead and post the agenda kind of in the chat. Anybody who comes in after posting, though, they will not see it, so that's one of the reasons why. Go. Not. Okay. In the meantime, if anybody on the aquatic section call, if you would go ahead and post your, that's on the board, if you post the region and the districts that you cover along with your emails for everybody, that would be awesome. And Lauren, you actually chatted to me directly. Well, apparently there's a limit on how many things you can actually type into the chat. So I will add the rest of the agenda if it allows me to do it. Or it's user error. Okay, cool. There we go. There's the rest of it. Cool. So just a quick run through today, reopening of the facilities. We're going to go ahead and aquatic section started a task force to start creating some tools that are available. So the task force actually only consists of 3 people right now because of the swiftness. We need to get these tools out to everybody. So they will have an update for us. We want to know what agencies are currently planning for reopening. Just really want to stress the importance of working with your county LEMSAs and health departments. There was a request for talking about temperature screening as people are accessing facilities. Water Safety Month, we are in it, so there's a couple of things there. And then a couple of extra updates that we'll let you guys know about. So again, if there's any questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat. Thank you everybody who's introducing themselves. This is fantastic. I love it. But yeah, any questions, go ahead again and post in the chat. I guess I should actually introduce myself. I didn't do that this time. I am your host. My name is Terry DeRosier, in your aquatic section president, and this is our 6th Zoom, I think. So we've been doing these now for 6 weeks. So welcome back. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I am going to go ahead because I think the pressing question for most people, especially with the governor's most recent announcement for us starting to reopen back up a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Peter, and Matt if he is on the call. I know Pete and Peter are, so.
All right, well, I'll have Pete chime in on anything I forget as we move along here, but Pete, Matt, and I have been working on this diligently for about a week now, or maybe a little bit less, but we are almost at a point where we have a good rough draft that will be going out to the section leadership for review. The components that we have already put in this draft are general guidelines for what you need to do upon opening your facilities, with general entry requirements, distancing requirements, considerations for your locker rooms. We've have program pieces currently for lap swimming, swim lessons, water aerobics, diving, open water swimming, and we are currently in production working on rec swim, swim team elements, as well as synchronized swimming, possibly water polo. Yeah, I'm a little glassy-eyed because the last 4 hours I've been cranking out the draft piece of it, so excuse me for my lack of clarity here. I'll let Pete kind of chime in.
Yeah. In addition to that, we're looking also at specifically lifeguarding, both the review and the new class. That's one of my wheelhouses that I was going to talk about as well. Again, a lot of the stuff, Pete's been doing some a fantastic work along with Matt Galindo about some of the initial guidelines, and then consider the idea that once you start to work on the stuff or see the stuff, you use it as a foundation specifically, and then you build off of it specifically to tailor to whatever services or programming that you have needs for. And again, consider also the idea that, again, these are guidelines specifically, and the idea that how we traditionally do a lot of the current programming might be very different. We will offer programming, but it's going to be probably facilitated in a different way with restrictions or reductions. And so the education aspect of that to the people above you and to your community is going to be really important. Would you agree on that, Pete?
I would. And, you know, the document will indicate that, you know, you also need to get your own tailor-made to your facility, as not all facilities are equal and we all have a variety of different ones. We tried to make this fairly generic to be able to be utilized by just about everyone. And so that's the hope. I don't think we're too far off the mark on what we're recommending.
So I saw, it looks like Matt is now in on the Zoom, and Pete and Matt, do you want to kind of talk about briefly about what you've been working on, and then Pete, and then I'll follow up, or it doesn't matter how we go?
Yeah, why don't we start with Matt, since he's got the first primer of the document.
You may have
Matt.
to do it yourself. Hey guys, I'm not finding him right off the bat.
Yeah, Matt's not on the chat list, so he may not be on the call anymore.
Okay, because I see him on the Zoom chat right there.
Well, he entered something, but he's not. I can't find his name unless he's at the very top as a host like you were, Pete, or something, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I can do a brief summation because I pulled up the document in front of me, what Matt has covered. So,
can you share your screen?
Speaks to, I hate to share it just because there's so much, and I'm going to just be scanning on down, and want the board to be able to review it before it goes out to everyone. So apologize for that, but this just got to its stage like 30 minutes ago. So map covers entrance to the facility and front counter spacing, along with the facial covering guidelines, moves into restroom, locker room, changing areas, cleaning and disinfectant considerations, taking off and personal protective equipment, and additional consideration for employers. So then it moves into aquatic programming, and the first area that's talked about is lap swimming, and it goes pretty extensively into engineering controls for that, lane lines, etc. And each of these program areas will have a summary of the guidelines for each of them so that you can quickly scan down to those if you don't want to read all the detail. So it goes through engineering, goes through contact and touch points, pool equipment, distancing protocols, a variety of diagrams on how to lay it out. And then it moves into some of your lifeguard safety considerations as you're running your lap swim program. And so the first area of lap swim is much more extensive because it covers a lot of detail that you can apply to the other areas. We didn't want to do a ton of duplication. So the majority of it's front loaded on that lap swimming area. Then it moves into water fitness or water exercise. And then let's see. Then it moves into specialized water exercise, so things that aren't your typical that you may run, such as water walking, stand-up paddleboard, utilization of aerobic equipment.
Hey, Peter, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. It looks like, so Matt was having audio issues. Matt, is it working now? He's saying he thinks it is.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Then it's working now.
Awesome. So after that, it moves into swim lesson programming. So I'll turn it over to Pete, as this is his section and some of the other sections beyond it are his.
Okay. So Matt, I'll cover mine real quick, and then I'll let you, you can circle back and take over. Okay.
All right.
All right. So the idea about swim lessons is, and if you're looking at regards to specifically county health orders, it's really about not having that type of contact. So between public members of the public, but yet it's totally fine within a family. And so the idea or premise would be, and this has been discussed before, is that maybe from your parent taught, your super taught, and your learn to swim levels 1 through 3, you have a parent or a guardian or an older sibling participant in there to help facilitate a lot of the activities that you're doing within the swim lesson program. The idea also is to designate specific things so that if you had a normal program that within a half hour you ran 50 kids through, you might have to drastically reduce that specifically. So keep that in mind. And so if you would do a pairing of the parent and the child, they would also possibly have a small cache of swimming aids or teaching aids that they would utilize. Either they bought personally or they brought in later to be decontaminated after each lesson. So keep that in mind. But the real part that I think the value that you need to consider is that the allocation of water time, specifically that 25 or 30 minutes that you're going to have that person in the water, really needs to be front loaded with some sort of pre-swim lesson curriculum that's in a digital format that really kind of explains where that instructor wants to go for that particular lesson, because the adult's really going to be helping facilitate the progress for their child. So keep that in mind, because again, if you're going to be guiding the hands of the parent, you got to really inform the parent of how the progression is and what you're looking for and what are the challenges in that particular skill or that water proficiency. The instructor's probably going to be on the deck providing that guidance. In addition, I think you should have a visual aid that talks about your agenda for that specific day. Keep it simple, maybe 5 items. And again, I believe if you do this right, there's going to be more time on task per child in regards to getting the skills. We've seen specifically with instructors, new instructors, a lot of time of that 30-minute window is done talking or moving or some sort of logistics of transitioning a kid to this activity or this group. And so if you play it right, the kids actually get more out of it. The downside is you're just not going to have that volume of kids going through your program. So those are the things. Some of the other additional items is that you would have very specific staging areas prior to the swim lesson that the parents would meet at, go into the water, and then a second group would come to a second staging areas for that specific area. Keep that in mind so that they're not sharing space up on the deck. And then if you can, I would stagger stuff as well. So if you broke your pool up into 4 quadrants, quadrant top A and lower D would share a time frame of cycling in at 15 minutes and 45. And then if you have another one here, which is the B and the C, they would be cycling in at the top of the hour and at the bottom of the hour. Again, to reduce the amount of people. And then also considering the idea specifically that those groups would keep their gear at the staging as opposed to stored in the locker room or the changing room, just to reduce the amount of wear and tear and gathering that might go on within the facility. So those are things that you would consider. Maybe for some of the larger groups that you would do, or I mean, not larger, but older groups like level 5, 4, 5, and adults, they would not need someone specifically. And so some of the stuff I specifically talk about, I've provided 3 diagrams that you could utilize on how to do the spacing that we'll share later. Pete's doing some amazing graphics on the chicken scratch that I did. So I want to thank him, and he will be very shy and bashful about that. But the other things that you really want to think about as well is when it comes to swim lessons, the drive is also to bring in some sort of revenue. And I believe that the traditional lesson where we at East Bay Regional Parks would provide 8 lessons over 2 weeks, you might want to make it down to 4 lessons, and 1 lesson a week for 4 weeks, or 2 weeks you eat Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I think that's going to be okay, because really the idea is people want to have some sort of activity and participation. And the idea that some child's going to get 8 lessons now for over 2 weeks is just not realistic because of the reduction in how you can safely provide that type of programming. So keep that in mind when you are developing your swim lessons. Also think about how you are going to advocate for the disinfectant of in and out of the water. I've considered the idea that they wear a mask all the way to the end. They put it in a Ziploc bag, then they enter the water, and then they pick up their mask. Some of the other things are encouraging them to reduce their contact, specifically on certain things, and having that ability in between lesson, either the parents or the participants do the disinfecting, and then your staff does a quick walkthrough. So keep those in mind in regards. I believe that you can do swim lessons. It's just going to be a very different, more similar to a private lesson or a private group lesson, either in a single, dual, or triplet. So that's the stuff I've shown and the diagrams I have. And we can ask more questions about it, but again, it's about your ability of your instructors to communicate to the parents on how to participate within the lesson. That's all I got for swim lessons. I've done open water training as well. And the idea is that's really going to fall upon the user groups to maintain and guide themselves in regards to the health order. And if you have an open water facility where they come, I would have it restricted on the time of use. We have some that specifically have any time in the morning and any time in the afternoon. And it might have to be the ideas that you restrict it down to Fridays or Tuesdays or Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, something like that, because you're going to have other user groups that are going to want to use access to specifically open water, because again, that might be the only game in town depending on the region that you're in. So consider those types of things. The big concerns are always going to be the staging prior to that, the staggering of the entry and the staggering of the exit. And then have they developed a specific protocol or policy when you pass someone in the water. Pete Byers was great. It's like you take 3 strokes, and if you need to take a breath, you breathe away from the other person that you're passing. Those types of things. That's all I got right now. And then again, I'm continuing to work now on lifeguarding review, the new test as well, and then some procedures in regards to lifeguarding as the protocols for them. That's all I got to share. You're up, Matt.
All right. So I worked on the, well, I mean, at least for me, the fun part. Probably not fun for everybody, but these are a combination currently of what the CDC is recommending and then guidelines that have been provided for our facilities from both Contra Costa and Alameda County. And the ways that I did it was, whichever organization had the higher standard was the practice that I generally went to. Peter and I were on a call last Friday with the CDC in the morning, and the representative that we talked to made it really very abundantly clear that the obstacles we're facing is not the pool water. There's somewhat of a misquote on their website that water doesn't transmit the virus. By all indications right now, the current methods of water treatment we're utilizing successfully deactivates the virus, which is probably a more accurate interpretation of that. And so his emphasis to us constantly was that what we're actually managing is a facility, and what we're looking at is all of the same social distancing, mask in place, 6-foot barriers between people, disinfection that we would have for any other facility that we would be attempting to open. And so the first part of mine was just sort of guidelines. And actually a lot of these were motivated directly by Contra Costa County, including signage and verbiage that they're anticipating that we'll have at our front doors prior to someone entering. Requirements of staggering people as they enter your building to ensure that you've got 6 feet of separation, using markers on the floor anytime a line might be created to designate where people can stand, requiring that individuals are wearing face coverings in your facility at all times. The gentleman on the CDC call recommended that we have them using face coverings all the way out to the pool, and then once they're out of the pool, back on. Providing hand sanitizer and soap and effective disinfectant at your front counters or any high traffic area where your staff and your patrons may be having interactions with each other. Different types of sort of barriers that your counter staff can utilize to offer up an extra barrier between them and any sort of customer interactions. There's also a recommendation that we minimize any sort of paper transactions as much as we can, going as far on the electronic path as possible. I then got into restrooms and locker rooms, changing areas. One of the interesting things I've seen on a lot of calls is people trying to figure out how they're going to set their patron numbers. And it sounds like a lot of people are working from the pool into the building. My brain works a little differently in that I work from the building out to the pool. And the reason I think that way is, if anyone isn't aware of it, the state of California Health Code has very specific guidelines as to the number of patrons we can have based on the number of amenities we have. So for instance, we're required to have 1 shower for every 50 pool users. So a way to start looking at your patron numbers is, if you can have 200 people in your pool normally because you've got 4 showers, but you've decided to reduce those showers by 2, you now can only legally have up to 100 people in your facility at one time. And I included in there what the requirements are for showers, your toilets, your urinals, and sort of your individual lavatories with those numbers. And then we got into some strategies in which so one of the big things that is being emphasized right now is the 6-foot social distancing in our bathrooms. And so it's absolutely going to be critical, for instance, at your sinks, that you're looking, can people successfully wash hands, do sort of their normal activities and behaviors at your sinks? and maintain 6 feet of distance between themselves? Can gentlemen use your urinals and maintain 6 feet of distance between you? I even included a photo of like a urinal that has the spacer wall in between, but that is not being counted as protection because clearly you can still make face-to-face contact and it's not 6 foot of distancing. And two of the interesting notes that I noticed, that's some of the stuff that's coming out with the CDC is your stalls, and a lot of you have individual shower stalls. Even though these are individual compartments, from the CDC perspective, the way they're looking at it is, can 2 people enter and exit successfully at the same time and maintain that 6 foot of social distancing? So you might have 2 individual stalls, but it doesn't mean if they're right next to each other, they can both be utilized. You'll either have to figure out a way to stagger people entering or exiting them, or go to sort of an every other approach. And then my last section, I got into kind of really long CDC guidelines on how to go about disinfecting everything. They do not have guidelines right now with timelines on how to do that. Like you should disinfect every 20 minutes, every hour. Their current wording is frequently, but there are specific things when you guys look at the guidelines that I underline where they're emphasizing those things be disinfected or wiped down prior to each use. And I also included on there, your pool water does not count as a disinfectant. You cannot splash something with your pool water and say it's disinfected. It will need to have an appropriate disinfection and wipe down, not just pool water poured on it. So I think that's, I covered my stuff.
All right, I know we've gone through a ton of stuff and a lot of it is very generic, but if people have questions, you can either type it in the chat or unmute yourself and we'll try to answer.
So the main question that has come out is people are asking how they're going to receive this and when they're going to receive it. So basically, I just want to assure everybody, number one, I want to thank Matt, Pete, and Peter for doing this. You know, it ended up happening very swiftly and you guys jumped on it right away, and like tremendous, like, thank you so much for the tremendous work that you've done so far. We will email it out to everybody via our membership. Those of you who are not members, we'll also share them with the operator groups as well as with, we'll try to post photos on Facebook. I can't post a PDF on Facebook, so because it's a page, not a group. So just be aware of that. But they're not done with it yet. So depending on what they get through, we may release it in phases or just really what they're most comfortable with, but the board will review it first. I just also want to state, this is not the end all be all. You still have to make it for your facility and work with your health departments. Because really it's your health departments that are going to dictate how this gets rolled out. These are just guidelines. I know Peter mentioned it before, and I think Pete also reiterated it as well. These really are just some recommendation and guidelines. This is not something that we're saying you have to do this. So, so yeah, let's see. There are a couple questions. USA Swimming seems to be recommending to arrive ready to swim in a suit and not showering for swim teams. Thoughts?
California code specifically states that we are required to provide shower facilities for our users and to recommend that they shower prior to use. So
yep,
that's fine that USA Swimming has created that guideline. If the swim team wants to adhere to it, I mean, now I'm speaking out of my comfort zone, but bottom line is we are required to provide showers and we are required to encourage people to utilize showers prior to them utilizing the facility.
Okay, Clayton is asking, how about aids to get in and out of the water? Do you stagger use and disinfect handrails, ladders per CDC standards?
I mean, Pete can kind of talk to this, but currently our recommendation is you are not going to be utilizing human aids unless it is direct family, adult participants. assisting with that.
That's correct. I think the other thing in regards to disinfectant, I think it's going to be put on us that if you have some sort of hand wipes or some sort of disinfectant wipe right there, you're going to train and educate your participants. Grab a wipe, wipe it down, then get in, or wipe it down after you get out. So you're doing that. Or specifically identify that they're going to enter and exit the water from the deck at their specific allocation of space. Does that make sense? If they don't need it. Again, I think it's going to be kind of loose and fast in certain regards of like, we don't want to make sure everyone has to use the handrail to get up, because then it's going to be a pain in the ass to clean that handrail all the time. But if they can enter the water and exit right from the deck, right in their spot, that's going to help out tremendously, because they're already going to be grabbing and reaching for their own teaching aids in that spot as well. Does that make sense? I'm looking at Terry for guidance, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me, but I don't want to speak for anybody. So if it doesn't make sense for somebody, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
Right, and there's one other question about a mask. Put the mask in a Ziploc, and then the Ziploc going to be in their allocated ring of circle. So I was thinking an easy way of their gear is you can put a small hula hoop down that on the deck. This is where their gear is. That's their allocation. So it encourages the family not to spread their stuff as far as the eye can see that regard. Again, the mask should stay dry in the Ziploc. Their stuff should be there. Trying to keep it really low cost, simple for us to run a program.
So Trisha actually asked just before that, beyond walking into the pool with masks on, what was conversation about water use or non-water use?
CDC on the call on Friday does not recommend that individuals are wearing masks in the pool. And I'll use Peter Byers terminology that obviously the concern is that would have sort of a waterboarding effect.
Exactly.
Somebody in the water. So the recommendation is utilizing a mask up to the pool and getting out of the pool. And so they emphasize that's why the 6-foot social distancing in your water is going to be so critical.
Yeah, thanks guys. I was wondering the same thing, especially for guard staff when they're trying to do rescues. So I know Tim sent me an email to ask about temperature checks before entering facilities. Did you guys get anything from CDC for that?
Their recommendation probably is, but people can bypass that if they take 4 ibuprofens, an hour before, once they check their temperature at home. But that is part of the guidelines. Participants coming into a facility that they not have a temperature.
I think temperature checking is great, except for that the virus could be in you and you don't have a temperature yet. So everyone keeps thinking thermoscan thermometers are going to be the answer, but you could be contagious with the virus before you have a temperature. And and on lap swimming, so 6 feet's great until I'm huffing and puffing because I'm working out hard. The harder I forcibly exhale my air, does that mean it's 9 feet now? I love what you guys are doing, but I don't know. There's so many unknowns still that I think it's a great project to work on, but I just think the clarity from people about how this would done. What if you just park your ADA lift in the water all the time? Since the chlorine in the water seems to be something people are agreeing upon will help with reduction, and then someone pulls it out, gets in it, and puts it back in the water.
Yeah, thanks Jim.
I think Jim laid out some very good things specifically. And I think the biggest thing that I've heard also Jim say too before is that we want to try to lead as opposed to wait. And we're striving to try to build the ship as it's sailing kind of thing. And I'll be very direct. I think the guidelines that we started today might not work tomorrow, might not work next week. Exactly. But at least we're trying to lay some of the framework. And again, some of the challenges are not going to be your agency or your region. It's going to be public perception and your own personal beliefs if that's going to fly with you in implementing that. I know that sometimes the struggle is, well, we're going to put the onus on the participants. There's going to be a collaboration on that. And let's talk about for disinfectant. Yeah, we're going to do what we can, but we also need the public to do what they can. It can't be just shouldered on one of us or one party. So keep that in mind. And again, some of the stuff, what we're talking about is not absolutes. So again, you're going to have to sell this. And so the idea was just to generate some ways of doing that are going to be palatable for you to take back to your agency or your health department. Pete, would you agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, Jim brought up a lot of points, and Matt and Pete and I discussed kind of the disinfectant element of the recommendation that, you know, the pool water is not considered a sanitizing disinfectant element for equipment, even though any germs that or viruses that go on it and then it's immersed into the pool is going to have a fairly immediate kill time. But they're still indicating they still need to be wiped down. As far as, you know, the components of exercise that Jim mentioned, yeah, that could be a concern of how much they're working out, and you know, you can utilize different ends of the pool, but everyone doesn't stop every other lap. But the good thing about pool distancing, if you have a standardized pool and width, most of them are 2.1 to 2.5 meters, which is beyond the 6-foot barrier. So that's good. If you got a 2.5, you're looking at, you know, close to 8 feet if everybody's standing in the center. So you know, there are some really good elements because of the way pools are designed that help mitigate some of those issues.
So you guys, I'm gonna give this, if it's needed, another maybe 10 minutes, give or take. Jim, you actually made a really good point as far as the temporal or the temperature checks. I actually checked with our legal department / HR, and they haven't made determinations as far the legality associated with it, because you are totally right. Somebody could come in and not present a temperature. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And again, I just want to reiterate, these guys took this task on. This is not an end-all be-all. You really need to work with your agencies, your HR departments, your upper management, all of your admin, because they're the ones you really got to work with, as well as your health departments, because every single health department is going to do something a little bit different. So, but thank you for you guys for doing this and getting us started for sure. There is a question in here about lessons. I mean, the guys are coming up with safety guidelines associated with lessons, but I don't think we're going to provide the digital lesson guidelines. Or Pete, do you want to?
What's a digital guideline?
Is CPRS going to provide digital lesson guidelines, or will these be facility specific? And that's coming.
If you're talking, let's say, very specifically about like Learn to Swim Level 1, those guidelines on how you're going to push the curriculum and format the curriculum, that's going to be on you on that regard. And just want to close the loop on, I cannot thank Jim enough for the great questions he asked, because they are questions that all of us are going to hear, because there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people coming from all different directions. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk in this forum and to have those types of questions. So Jim, you keep being you. I love you. Don't ever stop.
I would just like to say, I tried to type in something, but obviously I'm illiterate because it's illegible. I don't want anybody to think, if you know me, you could very well look at me and go, there he goes, just looking at the negative side of all of this. And I don't want you to think that I don't appreciate what you're doing. I know the kind of time this stuff takes, and I know you three individuals all very, very well. And I appreciate what you're doing. I don't want you to think it's not appreciated. I believe that the problem the entire country's having with this right now is exactly what you said, Mr. DeQuincy. This could change tomorrow. And
Yep.
so right now I have a board looking at me going, why aren't you doing stuff like those guys? And me going, because tomorrow that might be irrelevant, and how much work are we going to do for things that may never happen, you know? I could plan on how I would operate a theater, but we're not going to operate a theater because nobody can sit in the theater, right? And so I think it's important to look at how you recover. I know that the public's going to be looking for me for camps and pools and life, and the sooner that our obligation to get people back to normalcy as soon as possible when allowed is huge. For me, that's Parks and Rec's role right now. How do I make you feel like life's normal again when all this stuff gets lifted or as it gets lifted in place? So, but I don't want anyone to think I don't appreciate what you're doing. Aquatics board, you guys are killing it. The call's amazing. You have 4 pages of people on here right now. It's pretty phenomenal testament to what we're doing and to how much everybody wants to get back to doing what they're doing and how interested they are. I just look at the names on these 4 pages and just go, damn, everyone who's anyone in the world of aquatics is listening right now. So thank you to everybody. And again, it's really important to me that you don't think I'm trying to poop in your punch bowl or your pool.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Thank you for helping support the foundation of what we're doing.
So everybody knows this is not a small read. So we're up to about 33 pages and we haven't hit all the programming yet. So it will take a little bit of time for people to go through it.
Yeah, you guys, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Absolutely awesome.
And Terry, just so you know, I know that was brought up before, some of the questions about regarding recreational swim or swim teams and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What we tried to initially address was some of the low-hanging fruit, stuff that was easier to do, because some of the other stuff that's being brought into question, it's a lot harder because it's really entangled in how you're going to work with that user group, that user group's perception of what they think is right and appropriate, because they have this belief system that's coming from other agencies or other organizations that aren't in this state, aren't in your county, don't fall under the guidelines of your health department. And so love USA Swimming to death. They think they do the great stuff, but sometimes it also makes it a little bit more challenging for the interpretation of how to move forward with some of that stuff, considering that some of the swim teams that we have in the area, 500,000 plus. And it's like my facility or multiple facilities might not be able to address their needs completely. So just keeping that in mind.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because we were supposed to host what would have been the Junior Olympics in July, and luckily USA Swimming has already moved that to 2021, so we're good there. But it's actually more of the rec groups, the rec swim groups, but a lot of leagues have already canceled, so we're still, but some of them are leaving it up to the teams, so we'll see what happens. But I agree with you, it's going to be really up to the user groups and the agencies to work together on some of that.
Right. And I think,
does anybody have a kid on a swim team? We're paying swim team dues for coaches to stay alive right now while our kid's not in the pool because we care about them. But at some point, I don't know about you guys, but in 6 different cities, I've never met a U.S. swim coach that wasn't just super concerned about getting their kids in the water and the athletes and the workouts and their future. And we all know that, you know, from people going in and changing temperatures in pools, you know, because they think it's better for their athletes, to everything else we deal with coaches. And I would just caution you to hold them at arm's length and continue just tell them, you know, this is about the community, not about your team or your kid or your aspiration. And thank goodness USA Swimming just kind of cut everything off so that there's no drive for these people to try to get to a meet or something, right? You know, 5 kids in a lane is never going to happen for a while.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Happen. Swim in the bay. That's what my kid's doing.
That's great.
Right off of your beach, Pete.
Nice.
all right, Jim, you rock on that. I love you. Thank you for saying that.
Hey, on that note of not having a bunch of kids per lane, rolling back to maybe a lap swim program. has anybody thought about changing their lap swim programming to like a premium lap swim where you prepay for a 2-week block for your, 1 hour or whatever, morning, afternoon, evening, and limiting one person per lane or one household per lane?
So the guidelines we're putting forth are to limit time in any of the programming. So our recommendation is 30 minutes at a pop, and rotating out. Now, how you facilitate that as an agency, is going to be different from place to place. I know for our operation, we're looking at advanced reservation system for primarily our members first, and then if there's additional space, we will open up allocation beyond that because our members have already paid. So each agency is going to be different how they handle that.
Dude, a half an hour, I can barely get my shoulders working.
Oh, come on, Jim. The way you move, you're going to get 2 miles in. Come on.
Oh, dude, a half hours. But it's better than nothing. And nothing's right now, and that sucks. I don't know about you, but I hurt all over because I can't swim.
And I think what Jim said and what Peter said are super important. This situation might also carve more opportunities for people to swim. Whereas someone might want to swim at 8:30 at night now, or 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, when that might have been a specific dead time, because again, something is better than nothing. And that might also be the opportunity that's carved out both for aquatic programming and swim lessons and such and such. So consider those things as well.
I think the real creativity will come from how big's your pool, how many people can you schedule in there. I saw Kat said sign up genius. We thought the same thing, sign up genius, right? Go and pick your lane, reserve your time, come in. But as a director now, it's like becomes a budget issue too, right? Like
Right.
How many people can I bring in and how many people do I need at the pool? One to let them in, one to disinfect, one to guard them. What's that start to cost me? Is it a losing proposition? Considering all the cleaning, safety, constraints, everything else, and you're going to hate me because there's chlorine in my blood, but is it worth it?
Right.
If you have target projections and you're laying people off and money's hard and the whole revenue stream shut down from everywhere, can you justify it? And I'm not saying making a judgment. I'm just saying this is a question people are going to have to ask, right?
Right.
Well, that question I presented to town council on Tuesday, and above my pay grade. Like I put the numbers out there, I put the program together, I put projected participants, and then let them decide, let them come back to the department head, and then that comes back to me. Best guesses, best data that we have, and hopefully we can have gatherings larger than 10, 20, 50, but I mean, those things will limit what we can do, right?
100%. Let's change my title.
All right, you guys, I am gonna actually stall this conversation for a moment. I want to do a couple of announcements because we only have, well, technically we have 12 minutes left, but I also know we can extend past 1 o'clock, but for those that need to get off at 1 o'clock, just a couple of announcements. So keep in mind, it is Water Safety Month right now. We have partners, 5 partners we're working with, the aquatic section's working with. Shout out to Andrew Hubbard, Steph Molina, Tim and Kasem, who have all been working together for the aquatic section to work with those partners and get those out. The other thing that's happening is when we see stuff on your guys' Facebook pages, we actually are sharing that as well. So just want to make sure that you guys are aware. So if there's something that you don't think we've seen, shoot maybe a message to Stephanie Molina or myself, because I think we're the 2 that can post on Facebook right now. And then also keep in mind, Water Safety Day is May 15th. It is a week from Friday. So woohoo, Water Safety Day, wear red. Post pictures of yourself wearing red. We are actually having a board Zoom call so we can all wear red and take pictures. We Zoom pictures of ourselves, I guess, so we can post it in honor of Water Safety Day. So next week's Zoom is actually going to be a webinar. Andrew, can you give like a 1 minute, tell me in 1 minute what we're actually what that webinar is on. It's about an hour and a half. So it's in lieu of this call.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I could sure use a break from COVID-19 and not knowing what we're doing and all that stuff that we've talked about for 7 weeks straight. So we're going to mix it up. And we have a webinar for, it's on a drowning case study. It was a victim at a YMCA. I'm not sure all of the details, but it's going to be put on by Gerald from lifesaving.com. He's going to run us through the drowning and all of the, things related to that case, which is going to take us about an hour. And then there'll be a 30-minute question and answer session. So, water safety, we want to celebrate this month and have positivity about all the good things we can do. But I think part of it goes along with understanding and diving into some of the negative parts of the drownings and the not so fun stuff. So hopefully we can take a break from brainstorming for the future and just listen and have some questions and, be more prepared for when we're back at the pool or, to provide water safety advocacy to our communities.
Thank you. Okay, so so that's next week. Zach or Tara, did you guys have a quick update for Red Cross?
I'm not sure if Zach wanted to say anything today, but we don't. I think he's trying to talk and muted. Can't hear you.
Well, in the meantime, Stephanie Molina is posting the hashtags drowning is preventable, CPRS Aquatics, and better together. So those are the hashtags for this month. Okay, Zachary.
I'm just gonna take over. There's really nothing crazy, you guys. There's one more document that got posted on May 1st. It's just a quick aquatics update. You've seen most of these resources already. So again, just keep your eyes posted or eyes peeled on the Learning Center update page. Something should be coming out soon, but I don't have details on that. So keep your eyes out.
Perfect, thank you. And then NRPA Aquatic Network has a call tomorrow. It's 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that is what, 11 a.m. our time? Correct me if I'm wrong. Not great with my time zones right now. And then the other thing I'm also posting in the chat right now is Stephanie from CPRS. She sent out a rollout to return to play risk assessment tool. So wanted to share that with you guys. And then just keep monitoring the online groups and stuff because people keep posting in there. There's a lot of stuff going on. And then we're going to continue these weekly Zoom chats right now, at least through May 27th, minus next week for the webinar. But wanted to make you guys aware of that. Now, I think I left us with 8 more minutes to go back. There is a question in here about lifeguards. Since lifeguards are not able to keep social distancing when providing a safe or helping a victim, or providing a save or helping a victim with any other life-threatening emergencies, will agencies need to provide hazard pay? Any admins on the call? Want to step in on that one?
Sorry, I was reading a message.
No worries.
Question was what?
About providing hazard pay to lifeguards.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what? This is going to come back to like, if you were walking down the street and someone fell down on the sidewalk next to you and you didn't have a mask, would you help them or not? And that doesn't sound like it's about what you're talking about, but it totally is, right? I would drop and give them mouth to mouth because I would worry about the ramification of what saving that life cost me later. I think anybody thinking that I have to have hazard pay because there's the off chance that I might have to do mouth to mouth on somebody. You have to go back to 1 in 140,000 people drown in public in a pool that goes near the water. How many people a year come? What's the likelihood of this? It's always eventual. And our police and fire getting hazard pay every day for what they do. That's my admin hat. So let their union fight for that. Let their union fight for that and see how far they get. That's what I would say.
Kelly Nelson says, for agencies that government entities aren't required to provide hazard pay to employees. don't know if that's different. I haven't asked our agency yet, so.
I think the guy that feeds the lions at the city zoo ought to get hazard pay, but you know, I don't know about.
Hey, Steph, can you mute people?
Was eating chips.
Perfect, thank you. So just so you guys know, everybody got back to being muted again. So if you do have something to say, unmute yourself. Please feel free to do so. Thank you, Colin. So Debbie says, I'm not sure about hazard pay, but our temps are eligible for 10 days of sick leave if they end up getting sick. Okay, let's see. All right. Ashley, I know you only sent this to me, but you asked me about the NPR webinar info. NPR is at, or NPR, where am I going from? NRPA is doing a free webinar on aquatics programming. If I can find the link to that, I know it went out in Lauren's email this week, but if I can find the link to that, I will shoot that over to you. I'll put that in the chat as well. So if anybody has any other questions though, I am not monitoring the chat at this moment in time, but if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and unmute yourself, because we got a lot of smart people on the call, even though we're in confusion land right now. Jay, if you're getting sick providing care at work, it's workman's comp issue, not sick time.
Just to clarify, somebody posted in that if they have part-time staff who get sick, that they only have 10 days of sick time. If you get sick providing care at work, that's a workman's comp issue, especially during the COVID thing, and they can confirm that that's where you got it from. That's like if you get injured at work providing care, that's a workman's comp issue. That's not a I need to use my sick time issue type stuff. If you get sick on your own out in the public, unfortunately, that's an on your own sick out in the public type deal.
Thanks, Jay.
That's a great point, Jay, and it's all going to come down to prove to me you got it at work.
Yeah, I agree with Jim. The only way that's going to come to fruition is if they actually come back as positive for COVID, and you can confirm that they had it during the time that you gave care. But you know, that's something you can at least say is a workman's comp issue, and then fight it later.
Yeah, and I think the correlation becomes the onus becomes on the agency to prove in court that an individual did not get skin cancer being a lifeguard.
Exactly.
It's not on the lifeguard to say, I got skin cancer working on the beach for LA County. It's on LA County to say, you did not get skin cancer working for me, or I gave you every possible protection, education, sunscreen, shirts, visors, umbrellas and stuff. And I could see that whole COVID thing going the same way.
Yep, exactly.
Beck Hurst, did you want to say something?
Just that's been a topic of talking about reopening daycares, aquatics, anything where you might encounter the public, even if you're attempting to follow social distancing, is if there's any workers' comp liability. It seems like there probably is, although that's a new thing. There hasn't typically been workers' comp associated with illness.
I think that's why it's so critical to have all these protective things in place for employees. You know, all of our buildings got 3 signs on every door. Everything's being evaluated for touch points in public and who's coming in and out of the things that we still are walking in and out of. And so I think it's just going to be critical that you have in place these protocols like the things that Peter and Matt are working on.
Thanks.
So Tara just told me that a call that I posted happened this morning, but I have a notation that it happens tomorrow on the 7th. So sorry if I was wrong.
Yeah, I thought I missed something too that was at 11 o'clock this morning.
Oh, is it the second one that you mentioned, or the second one I just posted? Okay, they did do a talk maybe it was this morning for Texas.
Yeah, it was at 8 a.m.
Oh, was it? So it's the second. Okay, so that came through in the chat to me, so I just reposted it to everybody, only because I'm reading through a bunch of stuff really quickly, so I apologize if it had already happened. In all honesty, you might be able to find it on Facebook even.
Yeah, and then I think Tara and I have the presentation too, so if anybody wants some of that information, we can always send it out too.
Yeah.
Actually, can you guys shoot it over to me? I can have Lauren to send it out, and then we can send it to the operator groups too. So, cool. Okay. If I missed any questions, now is the time to unmute yourself and ask them. Oh, Corey is saying they did record the Texas talk this morning. Awesome. Thank you, Corey. Okay. No more questions? We're good? Awesome. Okay, well, I just again want to say thank you so much to Peter and Matt for all the work that you have been doing. I know it's been a whirlwind this last week and a half, give or take, probably less than a week. So thank you guys so much. As you can tell, there's still a lot of questions. To those asking me questions about how do you get on the email list and so forth, you do need to be a CPRS member, and you do need to be an Aquatics section member to receive the emails from the board. So I would recommend going to the cprs.org website and inquire whether you shoot them over an email or you call them, or you can shoot me an email as well, and I can try to guide you guys the best I can. There is a membership fee associated with it. During this time though, we are not being exclusive. We're trying to post as much information on our Facebook page as possible, because I would say, or our Instagram, those would be the other two locations you can try to get some information. So now last week I screwed up the recording, so we don't actually have a recording from last week. So I apologize for that, those who asked, but Stephanie is doing the recording today, and she will send it over to me. And I am putting my email in the chat. Let's see. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Let's see. Huge thank you. Will everyone be reopening with staff that are already trained or trying to train up new staff? Does anybody want to speak to that?
I'll go. We were put on a hiring freeze, so I'm not allowed to hire any new staff. Fortunately, I sent out my intent to return letters in January to try to get staff going. So it looks like I'll have plenty of staff to run my summer the way that it is. Once again, this is also based off decreased amount of lessons, social distancing, lap swim, and probably loss of recreation swim. But once again, we should still be able to run our program, if allowed, just at a reduced level.
Hey, Stephanie, can you post the Instagram handle and our Facebook page in there too, please? Peter Byers put in there if anyone wants to talk about anything, shoot him an email. His email's in there, or his grab his phone number out of the chat as well. Cool. Anybody else want to speak about their staff? Corey put the northtexasaquatics.com in the link in the chat. So for us, we send ours out in January as well, our intent to return. So we would have approximately about 110 staff returning this summer if something didn't happen between now and the time we just released our off-season staff. But we actually just tried online training, the Red Cross, or virtual training, whatever we're calling it, via Zoom, to work on research for our staff. So, I mean, they're only partially done because they still got to do physical skills, and that's obviously pending. But we're looking at starting up the lifeguarding classes of the 100 participants we had registered for that. So I don't know if they're going to reopen. It's really just going to be dependent on what our program is going to look like and how many staff we need for that adjusted program. Like I said, we have about 120 returning, or 110, 120 returning, and usually in a normal year we'd need about 175. So that's what consumer CSD looks like. City of San Marcos is not opening their pools this summer. Sunrise is starting with rehiring staff. versus new. New if they have to. Tracy Newman is City of Pleasanton. Okay. Hiring freeze as well. If it lets, they want to run with already trained staff. Cool. Okay. Clayton is also asking about junior guarding. CSD runs it, or Consumer CSD runs it as a camp, is what we do with our junior guard class. Anybody else plan on doing junior guard? Jay is asking Pete, any inside info on state parks opening up?
Jay, this is Pete. So, you know, we've heard that some of the beaches are opening. However, they're going in phases. I recently saw something on Seal Beach, and they were starting with weekdays only, daytime, and then and that was, you could go to the beach, but you couldn't put a chair, blanket, towel. You could just go to the beach, and then phasing it in, and it was up to 4 phases. And so I know that also I've heard through the grapevine with Kyle Maxwell, who works for us, his brother works for LA County Seasonals, and they're working on a soft target of June to open up as well. However, I don't know how the operation is going to look or the guidelines of what they're going to follow. Again, it's very site specific. And again, we've technically closed all of our parks and beaches. However, everyone is still showing up. And so I imagine that is going to be a challenge that all of us face for our parks, our facilities, just because, and just to frame it also, this idea of enforcement, it's like we have police that work for us and they are not enforcing. They are working on educating the population about social distancing and gathering. So the idea that I'm going to have a 16-year-old lifeguard or 18-year-old lifeguard doing the enforcement, I'm not even going to comment on that. So if I have a cop that won't do it right now because that's what the politics and what the direction is, it's going to be unrealistic to have a seasonal person doing that as well. So keep that in mind. Yeah.
So while the police are ticketing and releasing felons immediately, I'm not sure we're going to have lifeguards doing any kind of enforcement in this current world. I agree, Pete.
Yeah.
And those state beaches are so different. As someone who used to work on one there, you know, you park in a parking lot and you go set your blanket up 20 feet from someone else, and you hope that the lifeguard's been given the tools and they need in case they do have to rescue or contact people. But, you know, it's not like walking into our enclosed boxes, our fenced in areas. It's a little different.
Hey there, folks. Anthony Schreiber with the City of Pacifica, and we're having those same issues at our beaches. We've closed down the parking lots, and we're enforcing the same thing, or the police are enforcing the same thing. You can't congregate there. You can't have any umbrellas. You can't set up shop, so to speak, at the beaches. And so it's been a similar trend, I think, throughout California. So, yeah, I just wanted to chime in and say we got the same issues going on along our coast. But here at Ocean Beach, people are still kind of setting up shop, and there hasn't been too much enforcement by those lifeguards, but they are still patrolling up and down. So
all like 3 of them, right, that work for the National Park Service there?
Correct, yeah, and that's pretty much year round or during.
They got like 3 guys, 1 full, yeah, they don't.
Yeah,
tough
so.
place. It's a tough place.
Also just want to mention that Anthony is our Region 2 representative on the Aquatic Section Board, covers districts 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. Thanks, Terry.
I'm working on the plug so people know who to contact if they need to. So there is one thing I actually did forget. Tom from Hayward actually had some questions to find out what other agencies are doing for Water Safety Month. Tom, if you're on the call.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Hi, Anthony. So yeah, we're just trying to, I've got a lot of downtime right now. I only work in aquatics, and we're trying to put just some stuff together, mainly social media and maybe some constant contact, sending out some links for some water safety information for our community. Is there anyone out there that's doing anything that has any other different ideas than that?
What's going on, Tom?
How you
Long
doing,
time no
Anthony?
see.
I know,
How you
brother.
doing?
How you doing?
Good to see you, brother.
You too.
And yeah, there was an NRPA blog that I sent out. I'd be more than happy to share it with you again. They kind of did some virtual swimming and virtual kind of safety tips and dry land workouts that you can do. And so let me see if I can't find that, and then I could send it out again to the group right now. But it was pretty neat. It's kind of like your virtual community center, but just for pools, and just trying to get the word out to be safe around our lakes, oceans, and backyard pools, promoting Water Safety Month, May, and then even some mini swimming lesson kind of sessions or curriculums that the parents could follow to practice in their backyard pools. And so that's what we've been kind of going with the city of Pacifica right now. And we're still in limbo, obviously, kind of like everybody else. And we're hoping not to close down programs completely, because we do have a strong swimming community in Pacifica. And so we're really hoping not to do that. And this has been great information from everybody. So thank you all very much for attending this call and sharing all your information. But let me see if I can't find that for you, Tom.
Hey, Anthony, Lauren also said if you send it her way, she'll add it in her weekly recap. And then Tom, Corey Riley posted in the chat as well that they did some social media posts over Pleasant Hill. So maybe you want to check out Pleasant Hill.
All right. Thank you very much, Anthony and Terry. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Tracy said for City of Pleasanton, oh, got another, okay. We'll have some staff videos going out as well as ARC and other materials on our virtual page. Stacy from City of something, but truncated, so I don't know which city she's actually with. Our pool managers have put together videos that are being shared on our social media site. They've also included videos regarding COVID-specific safety, like procedures, including glove removal. CSD, Consumer CSD is doing some similar stuff too, as far as like reading Josh the Otter and doing the safety pledge and water safety pledge and stuff like that. So, okay. If anybody else wants to hack, you can just unmute yourself. Okay. All right, with that, you know, an hour and we'll be 13 minutes into the call. Any last questions? And Tom, I apologize again for skipping over that. Okay, I'm gonna put my email in one more time, and if people have discussion topics that they want to shoot my way, please feel free to do so. Using AC. Working at, Colin, what are you saying? Working in offices and using AC?
Yeah, Sunrise, we're starting to have some of the recreation staff come back into the offices and using AC during that period of time. My ideas are basically I'm going to keep my mask on almost the entire time I'm in the office. So I was just curious if anyone's looked into that. I looked into HVACs and filtering out particles and stuff like that. I was just curious if anyone had thought of that already.
I read an email from the city manager in San Ramon saying that they were looking at upgrading HVAC systems and filtrations in our facilities, but it didn't get into any specifics of what or how or why.
Macy mentions that she wishes they had AC. I'm sorry. Kind of a bummer. Colin saying thanks. You know you can unmute yourself. Okay.
I was eating almonds and I didn't want to be that person, so.
It's all good. Stephanie can mute you. She can mute us all. Cool. All right. So just a reminder, next week it is just a webinar. It's about an hour and a half. And so we won't really have any discussions, but again, please shoot me an email if you do have discussion topics. Maybe we can start some questions on the Facebook page that people can reply to, something along those lines. So, but otherwise we will see you back in this type of format week after next. And then I think we'll have a safety presentation from Red Cross, and then our additional partners for Water Safety Month will hopefully be able to present in the following weeks. So cool. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, everybody. You guys are awesome. And we will see you next week and the week after.
Good week, everybody.
Bye, everybody.